You could give Chiefs $1 billion and they'll probably bring in Pesita, who'll pay him 2.5 million, give him a big signing bonus, and not do anything else with that money. Okay guys, so welcome to OT Response. This is just a show where I can look at the comments from the week and pick out a couple of them where I can actually speak to them and also maybe clarify some of the thinking behind some of the things that I've said during the week. A couple of years back, no one had this conversation when Chiefs and Pirates were sharing Vodacom, Standard Bank and Black Label. Chiefs and Pirates playing foreign teams all on their own. Where were these conversations? Now these teams are struggling with speaking unfairness. Come on, let's stop having YouTube videos about nonsense. Okay, look, first and foremost, whenever you hear me speak about something on my channel, when we speak about football and expanding football and all of that, please understand that a lot of it has very little to do with Chiefs and Pirates. The other part that I want to address is that when I speak about expanding opportunities for African clubs in order for them to get a little bit more in their coffers, Chiefs and Pirates are the last people on my list. They're not financially needy. And also, they don't seem to care too much about these things. You could give Chiefs $1 billion and they'll probably bring in Pesita, who'll pay him 2.5 million, give him a big signing bonus, and not do anything else with that money. So that's not who I am addressing. What I'm addressing about football is also not to cut down Sundowns or Ahly or any of the clubs that have invested heavily in what they're doing. I am more looking at CAF, where I say to CAF, are you creating a fertile ground for more Ahlys to emerge? Are you creating a fertile ground for more countries, both Somalia and those type of countries that don't have a big footballing imprint? Are you giving them a chance to be able to become Sundowns and Ahlys through some of the structures that you guys make? If it's possible to be able to give certain teams 10 million, 20 million, 30 million more through a competition that maybe people might not want to watch, let's say, I think that serves football a lot more than having more competitions for the top end teams, whoever that is. So that is the first part. Okay, secondly, somebody says, I agree with most of your points, but at the end of the day, football that we see as entertainment is their bread and butter for both agents and players. Hence, your issues are relevant across the world, no matter the structure. Misjudgments are always there and someone has to bench. This was in reply to my video about Cassius Mailula and his agent situations. I hear you, and I think that the difference is how much leeway do you have with the mistakes that you can make, right? If South Africa was exporting 50, 60, 70 players all over the world every year, 1 or 2 mistakes would be fine. But if our top end players with top end potential and you know, just people who should be leading the country later on, like Abo Mailula, when they're the ones getting cut down by mismanagement or misjudgments, then it becomes a little bit of an issue. Sundowns also signs so many players based on trend. Mendieta, Albas, Mashego, etc. The only difference is that they can sign a lot, They can sign 10 players, and if 4 players succeed, we forget about the other 6. It's true. But what I liked about what the director was saying is that it seems that they have a clear understanding or better understanding recently of where they need to plug holes, and you can see it with the players they've brought in and how they've, for the most part, fit in. Yes, you can have 2 or 3 players that aren't necessarily fitting the mold of a team, but for the most part, they've made sure that their failures don't outnumber their successes, and their successes are super successes. Think about players that have logged directly into the team, that fit directly in Abulunga, you know, the new players we've seen that have fit directly into the team, Ribeiro, Esquivel. And you can tell that that's a team with vision and a plan. The overall point I was making was that I don't know if there's many teams that can afford to be signing popularly. I like that you mentioned that they can afford to do that, right? They can afford to have some flops. I don't know how many teams can actually or have the leeway to have those flops. So if you don't have money, and we're all complaining that teams don't have money, then I expect the teams to spend their money very well, which might mean don't sign on trend. Sign what fits your team. Okay, the ideas you are proposing of 80-team AFL is not possible. Would be a logistical nightmare and kill local competitions. Capitalism rewards the top, hence richer get richer. But it takes a cost to get richer. While communism says even if you don't incur cost, you must be rewarded. In your suggestions, you are vying for the latter, and the system is unfortunately the former. So I've had a couple of conversations about this point where if I'm an association that is meant to be the mother body of all football within a continent, part of my drives has to be to create more viable opportunities for all clubs in my continent, or as many as I can. Let me put it like that. It might not be viable to do all of them, but as many as I can. So to say that CAF needs to be a capitalistic organization is weird to me, because that's not what it's built for. FIFA is not meant to be a capitalistic organization, right? And the other point that I want to stress again is that it's not about punishing clubs that have invested and are doing well. It's not about that. It's about creating more opportunities for more clubs to be in a situation where they can become those clubs. So if I can explain it, if Richards Bay, let's say Richards Bay, Morocco Swallows is at financial issues. If Morocco Swallows was able to be afforded a chance to play in a continental competition where they could meet up with other teams from other countries, get a chance to play continental competition, because that doesn't happen a lot, but more importantly, be able to get TV deals, be able to get sponsors, share them amongst themselves. And now what you've done is that you've lifted the floor of Swallows. And I'm using Swallows as an example, but it's more geared to the other African countries as well that aren't as well run, well commercially viable and all of that stuff. It's up to CAF to go, you know, we're going to lift you up. And while 10 million may mean nothing to a Sundowns, to a Chiefs, to a Pirates, to an Ahly, to a Simba, let's say, it could mean an entire change for another club in another country, where then they could go and attract billionaires to come and sponsor them, or sponsors to come in and give them more money. So that's where I'm coming from. The idea about the 80-team AFL seeks to answer that question. What I mean by 80 teams is you've got 80 teams, but you've got 4 tiers of competition, which means 20 teams in each tier of competition. So you'll still have your top teams getting to play their top competitions, right? Getting to play, you know, Ahly, Sundowns playing against each other, and all those teams playing against each other. You still have that opportunity, and you'd still be able to afford them whatever rights they get from TV rights. You still afford them whatever they can conjure up through sponsorships. But what's nice is now you have a second, a third, a fourth tier that now allows teams from Botswana, let's say Prisons FC, to be able to play in a tier where they get continental football, brings eyes to their players, where they can sell better players, where they can make more money through sponsorships, right? And also, it's a spectacle. Chiefs would not even factor, I think, in the top part of this thing. But can you imagine having Township Rollers versus Kaizer Chiefs, as we did earlier in the season, where Township Rollers may not have been that visible to everybody, or at least to South African commercial side, right? So now, if you can create a situation where those guys get to play Chiefs twice, get to play a Zamalek, maybe if Zamalek is not in the tiers, get to play Abu Asante Kotoko. Now you're creating other opportunities where in that tier, because there's a Kaizer Chiefs, for example, sponsors might be attracted to come to that thing. You get to fill out your stadiums and get your match day revenue. You get to take part in continental competition that maybe you couldn't take part in. But more importantly, you raise the base. So if the TV deal of the third and fourth tier can give each team 5-10 million participation fee, just off rip, 10 million rand, let's say, just off rip, right? And then you still have things like winnings, you still have things like your sponsors getting more visibility. That means that I haven't hurt Ahly, Sundowns and those teams at the top end, but I've helped a lot of teams around Africa. Guys, it's not expanding in order to make more South Africans be able to take part. It's expanding to make sure that everybody else has a fair chance. And I think that's part of what CAF needs to look at. You can't have a situation where teams can't pay salaries, right? Where teams struggle with basic things, where even travel becomes an issue, right? Now, this way, you can have them earn it. It's not a gift. It's earning it, playing, and getting that money back. So that is the idea behind the 80-team AFL. This guy deserves to work for the SABC. It's not Motsepe's fault that other teams' owners lack vision. That's all on them. They should know that success requires sacrifice. They've had countless amounts of chances but failed. We should have all teams investing in proper resources and improve the game. Yet only one team does that, and you hate them for getting results. Why not follow their example? Stellenbosch has a billionaire owner who is willing to do the same, and pretty soon there will also be continental giants. It's lack of vision from the other teams and failure from management to accept help from more competent people. Again, none of my comments are to harm Sundowns. In fact, I've done videos where I've defended Sundowns and said, look, I cannot tell Tate Motsepe not to spend money, or not to be serious, or not to take the risks that he's taken, right? I can't. That's not the point. The point is twofold. I agree with you that the owners need to do more. That is actually one of the topics that I've covered on my videos. But also, secondarily, it's up to the PSL to make sure that the ownership that is there makes sense. For example, right? The PSL, SAFA, CAF. So you can't have a team and not have a vision. I've argued that in England, whether you want to buy Aston Villa or you want to buy Chelsea, the checks and balances are pretty much the same. You have to be able to give a certain amount of money and have a certain amount of resources available, plus also have future resources available for other things like stadiums and all of that. That's part of your requirements as an owner. So again, my chat is not that Sundowns needs to stop doing what they're doing. My chat is, hey, CAF, make it a little bit easier for other people to join the ranks. Even if it means that on a basic end, for example, the PSL gives a stipend of 2 million, right? That is meant to be able, or what was it, between 2 and 4 million. That was meant to be the money that you can run your club on at a base. Now I'm saying to a CAF, why don't you allow more teams that opportunity as well? Because that base might mean that I can go and afford other things. And the biggest example of this is Mamelodi Sundowns. Dr. Patrice Motsepe has created such a solid base at Sundowns that now your Red Bulls can jump on, your Rock Nations can jump on, your Herbalives can jump on. Now they're commercially more viable because Tate Motsepe was able to take those hits over the years to get the team to a place where they can now be sustainable. And I think, again, the example goes back to that I don't think on a continental basis in our continent, with the team struggling, with the state of our leagues, with the state of our pay and all of that stuff, I don't think our teams can afford to do what Tate Motsepe did. So somebody has to step in at a structural level and make changes that influence that. So does that mean vetting your owners? Done. Does that mean making sure that certain resources are given to teams, and again, not Chiefs and Pirates and financially stable teams, but to teams where their base can be strong enough to go and attract other people, right? Attract other sponsors, attract other things, right? So that's the one part. Be structurally sound enough to create a base that 5 years from now, we may not have 10 Sundownses, but we can have 10 Simbas, new Simbas, who add to the competitiveness of Africa right? We can add more eyes to these teams where they can generate more sales from, generate more things from player sales, fill out stadiums with more competition that they haven't been able to have, you know. Playing Zamalek for Chippa United would be incredible, for example, at Buffalo City Stadium, right? Gives them a chance to get a little bit more. But you are correct in the point about the owners. The owners need to come to the party. Stellenbosch has not come to the party like Patrice Motsepe has come to the party. It's only now where they're starting to keep their players and sign them to long-term deals. That was literally something they decided this year, right? But Johan Rupert could do what Dr. Motsepe did. It would take him 2 years, 3 years. He's multiples richer than Untate Motsepe. So if he wanted to, he could pull up his socks. I've spoken about Supersport before. I don't know if you've watched the videos. I've spoken about Supersport, owned by a multinational corporation that does billions. They could theoretically give Supersport United upwards of 100 million as a budget for the season, or at the very least make sure that they can pay their players so they don't have to be sold to other teams. You look at Chiefs and Pirates, who generate their own commercial money. They could be doing a lot more, right? So those things, it's not in opposition of each other. They support each other. On the one hand, owners need to be more serious. On the other hand, the structures need to be sound to make it sustainable in the future. Not everybody's going to be able to get a billionaire. Not everybody's going to be able to get a billionaire that's going to spend like that. The top teams that are coming up in Africa have to be bankrolled like crazy. The Simba owner saying that he loses $20 million every year. That's almost 200 million rand every year on the team. But he's doing it because it's a labor of love. He loves his team. He wants to see it on top. Pyramids is only competing right now with Ahly because they're bankrolled by a lot of money, right? How sustainable will that be in the future? And can you build certain teams without breaking down the big teams or the historically big teams? That's one of the questions. I actually have a video that I'm going to do about financial fair play. Last one. My guy, you're not serious. One of the conditions to be at the World Cup is that you must be in the CAF top 4 CAF football rankings. Anyone who is serious enough can get there. You don't have to win the Champions League. If teams like Chiefs loses to Milford, that is not even in our second division, and Pirates loses to Jordaan Galaxy from Botswana, what business do they have in a World Cup? Let us not joke here. Chiefs and Pirates have enough money to buy the same quality of players like Sundowns. They always claim to be rich here on Facebook but lack vision. All they care about is filling up stadiums and that useless derby. Let local teams be local and let Sundowns just compete in the world to represent us in the world. And it's not like you don't benefit, because the same Sundowns team is the one that represents us as AFCON, and they'll qualify us to go to the next World Cup. Okay, there's a couple of things. Number one, the rankings are influenced by the Champions League. The Champions League has only 16 teams every year, and of those 16 teams, around 10, 11, or even 12 of them are repeat people that come, right? There's 4 World Cup spots. If Ahly and Wydad have already got the other ones and they have the points historically, it's over the 4-year period, right? It means that I would need to build a club to be able to fight them for 4 years without getting anything back, right? While they're still growing, while they're still competing. So that is the bar that I would need to be able to tie myself down to in order to compete as a team that does not make money. So when you look at it, again, your ask is not telling the full story. Sundowns is a great team. Was a great team before Dr. Patrice Motsepe that won leagues, right? Fortunately, commercially, they weren't that big. But understand that you were lucky to get a billionaire owner. It wasn't through just hard work and perseverance that this guy came in and bought in, right? He picked the team, he bought the team, he put massive amounts of money towards these things. Forget about Chiefs and Pirates. I'm going to say that again. Chiefs and Pirates are not held back financially. That's not why Chiefs and Pirates are not playing in this. But also, an expansion is not for Chiefs and Pirates to get in. You only have 2 spaces in our league to get into the Champions League. So in any case, it will be Sundowns or anybody else. It's 2 spaces. I'm talking about other countries that don't have spaces. Other countries that have to do a hell of a lot in order to get into a place where they can play a qualifying round. Think about it, tshwane, right? So expansion is to make sure that in different countries you are giving the chance to other teams to be Sundowns. Not that you are cutting down Sundowns or giving people a chance to do whatever. Then I want to speak to the point about Sundowns carrying the country. It's true. It's true. But wouldn't it be better to have Sundowns doing what Sundowns does, but to also have a base within the league where every other team can contribute 2 or 3 players that are bafana level, right? On top of the Sundowns. Where you can say that, you know, I can go to Richards Bay and this one is the quality I need. I can go to Royal AM, I can find another one. I can go to them and they can develop within their systems. That's what I'm saying. So even with your comment about Sundowns being international and other teams being local, cool. But wouldn't it be better for the country, tribalism aside with the clubs, for more clubs to be able to develop? Imagine if Supersport could develop, if Gavin Hunt could get 3, 4, 5 years with the players that usually go to Sundowns after developing. Now you've got a very strong Sundowns team. You've got a very strong Supersport team. You've got a very strong Kaizer Chiefs, Pirates. You've got very strong all the way down. We'd increase our base of players, right? And again, to go back to that other point, guys, owners and their teams have a role to play. I'm not absolving them. But when I speak about improving football, take off your team hats, guys. Think about it long term. Sundowns has 40 players, let's say, I'm using random numbers. Sundowns has 40 players that can represent South Africa. Imagine if the league could contribute 100. What does that do for the league? What does that do for those teams if they can sell abroad, if more players are available in the pipeline? And mind you, I haven't even spoken about competition because that's not the point of what I'm speaking about right now. So guys, just tribalism, guys. Forget about Chiefs and Pirates. Okay, here's the last. Okay, I'll do the last one. This is the one where I will address this directly. There was an era where only 2 teams benefited for many years, playing in tournaments where only they could participate and didn't even have to qualify for, where all the big sponsors with huge deals went to 2 teams and it was never an issue. So let it not be an issue now when Sundowns is qualifying for the big money competitions and suddenly we're harming other teams with our investments. So the point that I'm making, and maybe the point that I make, is that Chiefs and Pirates was already a problem for the league. Chiefs and Pirates benefiting and having all the money and having the tournaments and bringing the Manchesters and doing all that stuff was already a problem, right? To the point that for a team to come in and compete with them, not even commercially, I'm sure over $1 billion has been spent in the 20 years that Motsepe has owned Sundowns. So in order to catch them, in order to overtake them, he needed to spend that much money. Then I ask you, if the next team that has to compete with Pirates, Chiefs and Sundowns has to be owned by a billionaire, who's richer than Patrice Motsepe to catch them, who's going to spend even more money, then the next one is going to be that, and the next one to compete is going to be that, and the next one is going to be to compete that. How sustainable is that within the continent? How sustainable is it? Can we, in good conscience, say that there's going to be someone richer than Motsepe who's going to step in and do something, and someone's going to be richer than him, and someone's going to be richer than him, and that's going to be the model that's going to work in the PSL? And it's also going to work in, I don't know, Tanzania, it's going to work in Zambia, it's going to work in the DRC, it's going to work. How many billionaires will we need in order to fight that? So your point is my point. You can't have super-powered teams or ultra-super-powered teams, because to beat an ultra-super-powered team, you have to be even worse. And that takes them away from, well, those guys are already away from everybody. But now you're taking them even further away from everybody. That is my thing. So again, oh, and another thing. Chiefs and Pirates having their own tournaments, fine, I get. They've organized it themselves. They're doing well themselves. They didn't need to qualify because, you know, the sponsors are coming for them, blah, 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 all of that stuff. But when you look at continental competitions, where you are meant to be looking out for all the teams, you can't be having 16 teams qualify for the CAF Champions League. Only those 16 teams can gain points in order to qualify for the AFL. Only those 16 teams can get, at any given year, can get points to qualify for the Club World Cup. We already know most of those teams. What of the other teams? Are we opening it up so that we can allow other teams in? Not Chiefs and Pirates. Allow other teams in from other points of the continent in order for them to access these sponsorships, in order for them to access these opportunities, to access this continental what. There's teams who have done well in the Confed for years, don't have a space to come into the CAF Champions League. Is it unfair then for those teams? And if you look at the point system itself, Chiefs gets to one final. And because of that one final and the points accumulated in that run, they never have to come back. They have not been in continental competition ever since then, in the 4 years since, right? Yet they're still top 24. So if this competition was to go to 32 teams AFL, Kaizer Chiefs would form part of it, and that would be unfair. Because there are Confed teams who have been playing consistently in the Confed. And because the points don't come from Champions League, they've been playing more continental football than Kaizer Chiefs, but they don't have a chance. That's unfair. We don't even play Confed, guys. And we are top 25 off of this ranking system. So that is why I propose a change. Because if you do it this way, number one, if there's only 2 spots for the Club World Cup, Ahly, Sundowns, Wydad are going to monopolize those spots. Esperance are going to monopolize those spots. Then the only teams that can fight them are also the other big boys, your Simbas, your Petro de Luandas, all of those guys, right? How then will a team break into there, as you guys say, fairly, without being massively resourced? And how many teams are massively resourced? There are teams who play continental football right now complain that it's too expensive. So that is what I'm saying. For the good of our African football, you don't need to bring 12 teams to the World Cup. It's not the point I'm making. You don't need to expand it to 80 teams as I suggested the AFL. But surely you create some competitions that are geared at giving those guys a solid base. Champ, you don't seem like a businessman. More means more opportunities. Teams will have more players, more opportunities for players to be employed and showcase their talent, better competition, bigger drive to do well. All this commotion because Soweto teams are not involved. Stop looking at things from an indoor perspective. These competitions give more exposure to local players to play overseas, resulting in better income, better experience, better chance of Africa contesting for a World Cup. If all these competitions were not invented, the World Cup would only be European teams. Now the world sees Africa has so much talent and you can't ignore it. Okay, Sundowns has 60 players. Ahly maybe has, Sundowns maybe has 40 to 60 players. Ahly has 40 to 60 players. Those 40 to 60 players play in the Champions League. Those 40 to 60 players play in the AFL. Those 40 to 60 players play in the Club World Cup. What I'm seeing is that there's 40 to 60 players who are going to have a chance to be seen. More competitions with the same teams doesn't change anything in my eyes. More competitions with the same teams. You can still have those competitions for those teams. But how am I going to be found if my only hope of being exposed at a continental level is for Mamelodi Sundowns to sign me? And the point you make about the World Cup being just European teams, what I'm saying is what FIFA did. It was European teams and South American teams. Then they opened it up, and that allowed more African teams to take part. They didn't say we're gonna add more European teams or give those World Cup teams another chance to go win another World Cup, right? Or a separate World Cup where it's the same players. They literally allowed new players into the game, right? Not Chiefs and Pirates. So when you expand these competitions, expand them with the view of creating more places for more teams to be visible. If you've got 16 teams and each of them have 60 players, that's around what, 960 players? Now imagine if all of your competitions can encompass 100, 150 teams, 200, 300, 400. That's multiples of African players that will get a chance without needing to go to the biggest team within your league in order to have a chance to do anything. Without having to go to the biggest team in your league to get a better salary, right? You can stay at your team and play intercontinental football, which means that you could be scouted. You could stay at your team, and because your team has a TV rights deal that gives them X amount of money extra, they could probably keep you and have you develop in a very good environment that you're used to. They could afford to do that. Oh, and by the way, the eyes of the world are on you. So now I don't need the gateway to get seen. I don't need to go to Ahly to get seen. I can be seen from my club because I'm playing. Just like the World Cup. Adding another competition for European and South American teams will not, by virtue of that, make Africa more viable or African players more visible. But if you go, we've got a World Cup with European and South American teams, we're adding Africa. Now Africa has a chance. You've got Ahly, you've got Wydad, you've got Simba, you've got Sundowns. Okay, Somalia, which team can you bring to this tournament? Or your own tournament? We're going to give you a chance to have your own tournament. Okay, Ghana, okay, Banbani. Oh, can we leverage off of the older big teams that have eyes, and then we can put them with you guys so you guys get even more eyes and maybe negotiate better deals for yourself to make more money? That's the point that I was making. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to be doing this at least once weekly, just to clarify some of the points that I have made during the week and look at some of the comments and speak to them directly. Please do me the favor of liking, subscribing, following, sharing, commenting. It really does help grow these here platforms where we can speak deeper about these things. I'll see you guys on the next one.